The salty ocean breeze whipped through the harbor as the mystery machine rolled to a stop near the weathered docks of Coral Cove. Seagulls cried overhead, their voices mixing with the creaking of old wooden boats swaying against their moorings. The air smelled of fish, seaweed, and adventure, a combination that made Scooby-Doo's nose twitch with excitement and Shaggy's stomach rumble with hunger. "Like, why are we at this creepy old harbor again?" Shaggy asked, clutching his stomach as he climbed out of the van. "I was hoping we'd stop at that all-you-can-eat buffet back in town. Because—" "Shaggy," Velma said, a voice unusually tight as she clutched a worn leather journal against her chest. "We're investigating reports of a ghost pirate haunting these docks. Plus, I wanted to check something out." Fred noticed how Velma's eyes kept darting toward the horizon, where a mysterious fog-shrouded island loomed in the distance. "You've been acting weird all morning, Velma. Is everything okay?" "Fine. Everything's fine," Velma snapped, then immediately softened her tone. "Sorry. I just didn't sleep well." Daphne adjusted her purple headband and studied her friend carefully. "You know you can tell us anything, right? We're a team. We share everything, the mysteries, the dangers, and even the rewards." Scooby-Doo patted over to Velma, his brown eyes curious. He sniffed at the journal she was holding, and for just a moment, Velma pulled it away protectively. "Rat's rat, Velma?" Scooby asked innocently. "Nothing, Scooby, just research notes." But as she said it, a yellowed map slipped from between the pages, fluttering to the ground. On it, clear as day, was a drawing of the foggy island offshore, with a large red X marked in the center and the words "Captain Goldbird's Fortune" written in faded ink. The secret was out. And in that moment, as Velma's face flushed with embarrassment and something else guilt, perhaps, or greed, the gang realized they were about to face a mystery unlike any other. Not just a ghost or a villain in a mask, but something far more dangerous. The corruption that comes when someone forgets that true wealth isn't just about gold and treasures, but about the trust and friendship you share with others. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dock as the gang gathered around the fallen map. The wooden planks beneath their feet were slick with morning dew and sea spray, and somewhere in the distance, a foghorn bellowed its lonely warning. The smell of coffee from a nearby fisherman's shack mixed with the ever-present scent of salt and seaweed. Fred picked up the map carefully, his eyes widening as he studied the intricate details. "Velma... Is this what I think it is? A treasure map?" Velma's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses. Yes. I found it 3 days ago in the Coral Cove Library archives. It is authenticated, dates back to 1742. Captain Goldbird was a real pirate who supposedly buried a fortune worth millions in today's money on that island. She pointed toward the fog-shrouded mass of land visible from the harbor. "Millions?" Shaggy's eyes went wide as dinner plates. "Like, that's a lot of Scooby snacks, Scoob. Rillions." Scooby barked excitedly, already doing calculations in his head about how many snacks that would buy. Daphne's expression grew concerned. "Wait, you found this 3 days ago? Velma, why didn't you tell us?" "We always worked together." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. A seagull landed on a nearby piling, cocking its head as if waiting for Velma's answer too. "I was going to tell you," Velma said quietly, not meeting their eyes. "I just ... I wanted to verify it first. Make sure it was real before getting everyone's hopes up. And I was thinking about what we do with the money. You know, planning. Being responsible." Fred crossed his arms, his usual friendly demeanor cooling slightly. "Planning is good, Velma, but planning alone, without the team, that's not how we operate. We're a partnership. In mystery solving, and I thought in everything else too." "Fred's right," Daphne added gently. "When we work together and pool our resources, our skills, our ideas, our efforts, we're so much stronger. That's basic economics, really." Collaboration creates more value than competition. Velma felt a pang of guilt twist in her stomach. You're right. I'm sorry. I got caught up in the excitement. And maybe a little worried about how we'd split it fairly. 5 ways. But what if someone needs more? What if we disagree on how to use it? Like, I know how I'd use my share. Shaggy interjected, trying to lighten the mood. A lifetime supply of hero sandwiches and pizza. Ran Scooby snacks, Scooby added, drooling. Despite the tension, everyone chuckled. But the underlying issue remained. Trust had been bent, if not broken. Just then, an eerie sound echoed across the water, a ghostly, hollow laugh that seemed to come from the direction of the island. The fog swirled ominously, and for just a moment, the gang could swear they saw the silhouette of an old pirate ship with tattered sails. Jinkies! Velma gasped, her academic curiosity temporarily overriding her guilt. Did you all see that? See it? Like, I wish I hadn't seen it. Shaggy clutched Scooby, who had jumped into his arms. Fred's leadership instincts kicked in immediately. Okay, gang. Whatever's going on with that island, we need to investigate. But first, we need to be honest with each other. Velma, is there anything else you're not telling us? Velma hesitated, then pulled out a small notebook from her jacket pocket. I may have already chartered a boat for this afternoon, and I may have researched the island's layout, and I was thinking of going alone. The hurt on her friends' faces was palpable. Alone? Daphne's voice was barely a whisper. Velma, we've faced ghosts, monsters, and criminals together for years. Why would you want to do this alone? Velma's eyes welled up slightly behind her glasses. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if we found the treasure, it would change us. Change our friendship. I've read about it, how money can corrupt people, make them greedy, turn friends into enemies. I thought if I just handled it myself, made all the decisions, kept control of it, maybe I could prevent that. But I see now that I was already letting it corrupt me. I was already changing. The confession hung in the air like the fog over the island. Fred put a hand on Velma's shoulder. Look, we don't know what's on that island treasure, ghost, or just someone trying to scare people away. But whatever it is, we face it together. And if there is treasure, we'll figure out the fair thing to do with it. Together. That's what friends do. Rhea. Rogether! Scooby barked supportively. Velma wiped her eyes and smiled, nodding. You're right. I'm sorry, gang. No more secrets. We do this as a team. Then it's settled, Fred announced. We're going to that island. But first, let's gather supplies and information. We need to know what we're walking into. As the gang headed toward the local maritime supply shop, none of them noticed the shadowy figure watching from behind a stack of lobster traps, listening to every word with great interest. A figure whose eyes gleamed with greed at the mention of Captain Goldbird's treasure, and who would do anything to claim it first. What awaited them on that mysterious island? And would the gang's friendship survive the ultimate test of temptation? The Coral Cove Maritime Supply Shop smelled of rope, canvas, and varnish, the essential scents of ocean life. Dusty life preservers hung from the ceiling, alongside fishing nets and antique brass compasses. Behind the counter stood old Captain Marsh, a weather-beaten man with a gray beard and eyes that had seen too many storms. Treasure Island, eh? Captain Marsh said, his voice gravelly as he leaned on the counter. You kids should stay away from there. That place has been cursed since Goldbeard's time. Many have gone looking for that treasure. Few have come back the same, and some haven't come back at all. Like, that's not ominous at all, Shaggy muttered, hiding behind a barrel of rope. Velma pulled out her notebook, her scientific mind already working. Captain Marsh, can you tell us the actual history? I've read the legends, but I want facts. The old captain sighed and pulled out a worn photograph from under the counter. It showed a group of treasure hunters from the 1960s, smiling confidently before a boat. These fellows went to the island 20 years ago. Found them 3 days later, wandering the docks, babbling about a ghost pirate and screaming that the treasure wasn't worth it. They'd spent their life savings chartering equipment, hiring help, bringing in metal detectors, the works. Left completely broke and broken in spirit, Daphne leaned in to examine the photo. They invested everything without a backup plan. That's the danger of putting all your resources into one risky venture without diversifying or having a safety net. Exactly, miss. Captain Marsh nodded approvingly. That's the first rule of any investment, whether it's treasure hunting or starting a business. Never bet more than you can afford to lose. These men learned that lesson the hard way. Fred was studying a nautical chart of the area on the wall. What about the ghost stories? The phantom pirate ship? Captain Marsh's expression darkened. Been reports for decades. Some say it's Goldberg himself, guarding his treasure. Others say it's someone trying to scare folks away. Either way, strange lights appear on that island at night, and that ghostly laugh. I've heard it myself on quiet evenings. Scooby's ears drooped. Rost? Now, Scooby, we don't know it's a real ghost, Velma reassured him, though her voice wavered slightly. It could be someone using ghost stories to protect something valuable, Fred finished. Classic misdirection. Make people afraid so they don't investigate. Or, Shaggy added nervously, it could be a real ghost who's really mad about people trying to steal his treasure. As they discussed the situation, Velma quietly examined a display of old coins near the window. Among them, she noticed something odd: several coins that looked similar to ones mentioned in the treasure legend. But these were clearly new, their edges too sharp, their coloring too bright. Jinkies, she whispered, picking one up. These are counterfeits. Really good ones, but still fake. Daphne joined her, using her keen eye for detail. You're right. The weight is off too. See how this one is slightly lighter? She'd learned about coin authentication from her wealthy family's collection. Someone's making fake treasure coins. But why? Fred wondered aloud. Unless ... double quotes, unless someone has already found the treasure and is trying to profit from it by selling fake coins to collectors. Velma concluded, her eyes bright with realization. Captain Marsh overheard them and came around the counter. Let me see those. He examined the coins through a jeweler's loop he pulled from his pocket. Well, I'll be. You're right. They're fakes. And good ones. I bought these just last week from a fellow who said he'd found them near the island. Paid $50 each. That's fraud, Daphne said firmly. Someone's running a scam selling fake treasure pieces. That's theft through deception, taking someone's money by lying about what you're selling. Velma's mind was racing. This changes everything. If someone's selling fake coins, they might know where the real treasure is. Or they're trying to fund an expedition to find it by defrauding others first. Like a pyramid scheme, Shaggy said, surprising everyone with his insight. Like those guys who promise you'll get rich if you just invest in their amazing opportunity. But it's all fake? Exactly, Shaggy, Velma confirmed proudly. Someone's generating capital through illegal means. But who? Just then, the shop door burst open with a bang that made everyone jump. A tall, thin woman in expensive diving gear strode in, her boots leaving wet prints on the wooden floor. She had sharp features and sharper eyes that immediately locked onto the map Fred was still holding. I couldn't help but overhear, she said smoothly, her voice like honey laced with venom. You kids are planning to explore Treasure Island. How ... ambitious. I'm Marina Depps, professional treasure hunter. Perhaps we could work together? Pool our resources? I have equipment, expertise, and funding. Fred instinctively held the map closer. Thanks, but we prefer to work alone. Marina's smile didn't reach her eyes. Pity. The ocean is dangerous for amateurs. But I suppose you'll learn that soon enough. She turned to Captain Marsh. I need to rent your diving bell and underwater detection equipment. Money is no object. As Marina conducted her business, Velma whispered to the gang, "She's too interested in our map." And did you notice her reaction when she saw it? She already knew what we had. Like, maybe she's the one selling the fake coins? Shaggy suggested. Or maybe she's working with whoever is, Daphne added. Scooby, meanwhile, had been sniffing around the shop and discovered something interesting. A small pile of gold-colored dust behind a display case. Arford, Relma, Rook. Velma collected a sample in a small evidence bag she always carried. This looks like gold leaf, the kind used in crafts or in making fake coins look authentic. Marina completed her transaction and swept toward the door, but not before calling back. I'll see you on the island, children. May the best treasure hunter win. The door slammed behind her with ominous finality. Captain Marsh shook his head. That woman's been nosing around here for weeks, asking questions about the island. She's determined. I'll give her that. But determination without scruples is dangerous. Fred gathered the gang into a huddle. Okay, team. We have multiple mysteries here. The ghost pirate, the counterfeit coins, and now Marina Depths. We need to get to that island and figure out what's really going on. And we need to find out if Velma's treasure is real, Daphne added gently, or if someone's using that legend to run an elaborate con. Velma nodded, feeling the weight of her earlier deception even more heavily now. Whatever we find, we document it properly and report any fraud to the authorities. That's the right thing to do, not just grab treasure and run. That's the spirit, Velma. Fred encouraged. And remember, the real treasure is solving the mystery together. And Scooby snacks. Scooby added hopefully. Like in pizza, Shaggy chimed in. As they left the shop with their supplies, ropes, flashlights, first aid kit, and a rented boat, none of them saw Captain Marsh pick up his phone and make a hushed call. They're coming to the island. Yes, this afternoon. No, they don't suspect anything. The plan proceeds as scheduled. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent as the gang loaded their equipment into a small motorboat at the dock. The fog around Treasure Island seemed thicker now, more menacing, and that ghostly laugh echoed across the water once more, closer this time, more threatening. Whatever secrets the island held, the gang was about to discover them. But would their friendship survive the test? And what price would they pay for the truth about Captain Goldbeard's treasure? The boat's motor puttered through choppy waters as Treasure Island loomed larger ahead. The fog clung to its rocky shores like ghostly fingers, and the late afternoon sun struggled to penetrate the gloom. Waves slapped against the hull in an irregular rhythm that made Shaggy clutch his stomach. Like, why does every mystery have to involve boats? He groaned. Can't we investigate a haunted pizza parlor for once? Riza. Scooby agreed, his tail drooping as the boat rocked. Velma was studying her notes intently, cross-referencing the old map with geological surveys she'd printed from the library. According to my research, the island has a series of natural caves along the northern shore. That's where Goldberg supposedly hid his treasure. But there are also signs of more recent activity. Someone has been excavating there within the last few months. Recent activity? Fred's detective instincts sharpened. That supports our theory that someone's already searching for the treasure. Maybe they found it and are now selling fakes to throw others off the trail. Daphne pointed toward the shore where they could see another boat already moored at a makeshift dock. Look. That must be Marina Depths' boat. She beat us here. Rust our ruck, Scooby muttered. As they approached the island, the atmosphere grew noticeably colder and more oppressive. The rocks jutting from the water looked like broken teeth, and the vegetation on the island was thick and tangled, decades of unchecked growth that had reclaimed whatever human presence once existed here. Fred skillfully navigated to the dock and tied up the boat. The wooden planks were old but recently reinforced, more evidence of recent visitors. As the gang stepped onto solid ground, they heard it again. That hollow, echoing laugh that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Okay, gang, let's split up and search for clues," Fred began, but Velma interrupted him. "Wait, I think we should stay together this time. I know we usually split up, but ... She looked at each of her friends meaningfully. "I've already made the mistake of trying to do things alone. I don't want anyone taking unnecessary risks." There was a moment of surprise, then understanding smiles from everyone. "Actually, that's pretty smart, Velma," Daphne agreed. "Especially on unfamiliar terrain with potential threats. In business terms, it's about risk management, minimizing potential losses by keeping your team coordinated and informed. Like, I'm totally on board with not splitting up," Shaggy said enthusiastically. "Right, Scoob?" "Absolutely." But Fred's practical mind saw a problem. "You're right about staying safe, but we also need to cover ground efficiently. How about this? We split into 2 groups, but stay within shouting distance and check in regularly. Daphne and I will investigate the caves on the North Shore. Velma, you take Scooby and Shaggy and explore the southern beach where the map indicates an old pirate camp." Velma hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but we check in every 15 minutes using these walkie-talkies." She pulled out 2 handheld radios she'd brought from the supply shop. "Deal," Fred agreed. "And remember, if anyone sees something dangerous, we regroup immediately. No heroics." The 2 groups separated, with Fred and Daphne heading up a steep, rocky path toward the visible cave entrances, while Velma, Scooby, and Shaggy took a worn trail along the beach toward what appeared to be ancient stone foundations half buried in sand. As Velma's group walked, she noticed something troubling. "Look at these footprints," she said, kneeling in the damp sand. "Multiple sets, all recent. Some are definitely Marina's. You can see the pattern from those expensive diving boots. But there are at least 3 other sets. We're not alone on this island." Zoinks! Shaggy's eyes went wide. "Like, maybe we should have all stayed together after all." "It's okay," Scooby said bravely, though his legs were shaking. "Railroad tech, Velma." Velma smiled at her canine friend's courage. "Thanks, Scooby. Come on, let's see what's at those ruins." Meanwhile, Fred and Daphne had reached the cave entrance. It was larger than it appeared from below, a gaping mouth in the rock face with ancient pick marks visible on the walls. "Someone's been mining here," Daphne observed, running her fingers over the tool marks. "These are old, probably from Goldbeard's era. But look," she pointed to a section where the marks were cleaner, fresher. "These are recent. Within the last year, I'd say." Fred pulled out a flashlight and shone it into the cave's depths. The beam revealed a tunnel that descended into darkness, with wooden support beams that looked both ancient and newly reinforced. Someone's been maintaining this access. They expected to use it regularly. As they ventured deeper, they found evidence of a sophisticated operation. Battery-powered work lights mounted on stands, modern excavation tools neatly stored against the wall, and most tellingly, a portable generator. "This isn't amateur treasure hunting," Daphne said, examining the equipment. "This is a professional operation. Someone's invested serious money here, thousands of dollars in equipment alone." Or, Fred suggested darkly, they're using money from selling fake coins to fund the real excavation. It's like using stolen goods to buy more tools for stealing. The walkie-talkie crackled to life. "Fred? Daphne? It's Velma. We found something. The old pirate camp has signs of recent habitation. Someone's been living here, and they left documents behind. You need to see this." "On our way," Fred responded. "Be careful. Don't touch anything until we get there." But as Fred and Daphne turned to head back, they heard a sound that froze their blood, the grinding of stone on stone. They spun around to see a large boulder clearly rigged with some kind of mechanism rolling across the cave entrance, sealing them inside. "It's a trap," Daphne shouted, running toward the closing exit. But they were too late. The boulder settled into place with a definitive thud, plunging them into darkness except for their flashlight beams. Fred immediately tried the walkie-talkie. "Velma! Shaggy! Scooby! Come in! We're trapped in the cave!" There's been a cave-in or someone triggered a trap. Back on the beach, Velma's blood ran cold as she heard Fred's message. "We're coming! Hold tight!" But before they could move, that ghostly laugh echoed across the beach, louder now, more menacing. And then, emerging from the fog like a nightmare made real, came a figure, a spectral pirate in rotting clothes, with glowing green eyes and a cutlass that seemed to drip with ghostly fire. "Leave this island!" The ghost roared in a voice that shook the very ground. "The treasure of Goldbird is cursed. All who seek it shall share my doom. Roast!" Scooby screamed, leaping into Shaggy's arms. "Scoob, I can't run when I'm carrying you," Shaggy wailed. But Velma stood her ground, her scientific mind working even through her fear. Something about the ghost wasn't right. The way it moved, the way the fog seemed to follow it, it was too theatrical, too perfect. "It's a trick," she shouted. "Scooby, Shaggy, the ghost isn't real. Look at the projection equipment in those trees." She was right. Hidden among the branches were small projectors creating the ghostly image, with speakers providing the voice and sound effects. It was an elaborate illusion, but who was controlling it, and why? The ghost flickered and vanished, confirming Velma's suspicion, but her relief was short-lived. From behind the ruins emerged three real, very solid figures, Marina Depths and two rough-looking men in diving gear. "Very perceptive, Miss Dinkley," Marina said coldly. "But perception won't help you now. You and your friends have become ... inconvenient. That treasure is mine. I've invested too much time and money to let a bunch of meddling kids ruin everything." Velma's mind raced. Fred and Daphne were trapped. She, Scooby, and Shaggy were confronted by criminals, but giving up wasn't in her vocabulary. She'd gotten them into this mess by keeping secrets. Now she needed to be smart enough to get them out. "You've been running a con," Velma said, "buying time. Selling fake coins to fund your real treasure hunt. That's fraud and theft." "You'll never get away with it," Marina laughed. "Won't I? Once I have Goldbeard's treasure, I'll disappear to a country with no extradition treaty. The coins I sold? Untraceable. The treasure? Mine by right of salvage. I've played by the rules of capitalism. See an opportunity, take a calculated risk, eliminate the competition. That's not capitalism." Velma countered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "That's crime. Real business ethics require honesty, fair dealing, and respect for the law. You violated all of that. And you've forgotten the most important economic principle of all." "Oh? And what's that?" Marina sneered. Velma smiled slightly. "The value of teamwork and trust. You're working with these men, but do you really trust them? Will you share the treasure fairly? Or are you already planning to betray them like you've betrayed everyone else? That's the problem with greed. It destroys all partnerships eventually." She saw doubt flicker in the eyes of Marina's accomplices. "Good. Plant seeds of distrust." But Marina just laughed harder. "Nice try. Boys, take them to the cave with their friends. We'll seal all 5 of them in there while we collect the treasure. By the time anyone finds them, if anyone does, we'll be long gone." As the men moved forward, Scooby and Shaggy prepared to run, but Velma held up her hand. She had a plan, a risky one, but their only chance. She just hoped her friends would forgive her for what she was about to do. "Wait!" Velma shouted. "I'll make you a deal." Would Velma really betray her friends to save her own skin? Or was this part of a larger plan? And could Fred and Daphne escape their rocky prison before it was too late? Inside the dark cave, Fred and Daphne were working frantically. The boulder blocking the entrance was massive, impossible to move by hand. But Fred's trap-making expertise gave him a different perspective. "If someone rigged this boulder to roll into place," he said, examining the mechanism by flashlight. Then there must be a way to trigger it to roll back. Look for counterweights, levers, or pressure plates. Daphne ran her hands along the cave walls, searching for anything unusual. I found something. There's a gap here, like a hidden cavity. She pushed on the surrounding stones until one gave way slightly with a grinding sound. Wait, Fred warned. It could trigger another trap. Let me check for secondary mechanisms first. He examined the area carefully, noting the ancient engineering. These pirates were clever. They created a system where you needed to trigger 3 different releases simultaneously. It's like a combination lock, but mechanical. A fail-safe system, Daphne realized. Multiple authorization required, like how banks require 2 signatures for large transactions. It prevents any single person from betraying the others. Exactly. It shows these pirates understood the value of mutual accountability. They didn't trust each other completely, so they built in checks and balances. Fred traced the mechanism with his fingers. But we only have 2 people. We need a 3rd set of hands. Daphne's face fell. Then we're stuck until Velma and the others can help from outside. Not necessarily. Fred pulled out his pocket knife and some rope from his supply bag. I can rig a pulley system. We tie ropes to the first 2 triggers. Then we both pull the 3rd one together. It's not elegant, but it might work. As Fred began constructing his improvised solution, Daphne tried the walkie-talkie again. Velma? Shaggy? Scooby? Come in. But there was only static. The rock must be blocking the signal. Then we work fast, Fred said grimly. Because if they can't reach us, they might be in trouble too. Back on the beach, Velma's deal had bought them precious mitts. She'd claimed she knew a secret about the map, a code that revealed the exact location of the treasure as main vault. Marina, greedy and impatient, had taken the bait. Show me, Marina demanded, holding out the map. Velma pretended to study it, her mind racing through possibilities. She needed to create a trap, but without Fred's expertise or equipment, she'd have to improvise with what was available. The old pirate camp ruins, the beach itself, the timing of the tides, ... It's here, Velma said, pointing to a spot on the map that corresponded to a section of beach near the water. But we need to dig at low tide or the chamber floods. According to the lunar tables, low tide isn't exactly ... quote she. Glanced at her watch. 12 minutes. Marina studied the map suspiciously. How do I know you're not lying? You don't, Velma admitted honestly. But you also don't have time to figure it out yourself. The next low tide after this won't come for 12 hours. Are you willing to risk losing a day? What if the authorities are already looking for us? What if other treasure hunters arrive? The greedy light in Marina's eyes intensified. She was being manipulated by her own avarice, a classic economic trap where fear of missing out overrides rational decision-making. Fine, Marina snapped. We dig where you indicated. But if this is a trick, your friends stay trapped in that cave forever. Boys, get the shovels. And tie up these 3 so they can't cause trouble. As Marina's thugs bound Velma, Scooby, and Shaggy's hands, though not very expertly, Velma whispered to her friends, "Trust me. When I give the signal, run for the tree line." Like, what's the signal? Shaggy whispered back. You'll know it, Velma assured him. The group moved to the designated spot where the wet sand was dark and packed firm. Marina's accomplices began digging enthusiastically, motivated by promises of wealth. Marina stood watching, her greed making her blind to the tactical mistakes she was making. Velma watched the water carefully. She'd told the truth about one thing. It was approaching low tide, but she'd lied about the location. This area of beach wasn't where the treasure might be hidden. This was where an old pirate defensive system lay buried, something she'd read about in the historical documents but hadn't shared with anyone. As the shovels bit deeper into the sand, Velma counted down mentally. She'd studied the tides, the terrain, the history. The old pirates had engineered a trap for exactly this kind of scenario. Greedy treasure hunters digging in the wrong place. "Deeper," Marina commanded. "It must be at least 8 feet down." 6 minutes until high tide surge began. 5 minutes. 4. I hit something. One of the thugs yelled excitedly. "It's wood, like a chest." Marina rushed forward, pushing past her own men. "Let me see." That's when Velma saw it, the first sign of her plan working. A thin trickle of water seeping up through the hole they dug. Not from below, but from the sides. "Run!" Velma shouted to Scooby and Shaggy. Despite their bound hands, they sprinted for the tree line. Confused, Marina spun around. What? The pirates' ancient trap triggered perfectly. The digging had breached a natural underground channel that connected to the sea. At high tide, these channels flooded with incredible force. The surge of seawater exploded upward, turning the dig site into a geyser of cold ocean water and sand. Marina and her thugs were knocked off their feet, sputtering and blinded. The wooden chest they found was actually part of the trap mechanism of a false treasure that triggered the flood. Velma had already loosened her poorly tied ropes and freed herself. She ran to help Scooby and Shaggy, quickly untying them as well. "Velma, that was amazing," Shaggy gasped. "But how did you know about the water trap?" "I read about it in Captain Goldbeard's journal entries at the library," Velma explained, already running toward the cave where Fred and Daphne were trapped. The pirates built defenses against exactly this kind of greedy treasure hunting. They knew human nature, that greed makes people reckless, makes them ignore warning signs. So there never was a treasure at that spot. Scooby asked. "The real treasure location is still a mystery. But right now, our friends are the priority," Velma said firmly. They reached the cave entrance just as Fred and Daphne triggered their mechanism from inside. The boulder began to roll away with a grinding sound, and after a tense moment, it cleared the opening enough for Fred and Daphne to squeeze through. "Velma!" "Thank goodness," Daphne exclaimed, hugging her friend. "What happened?" "We heard shouting." Velma quickly explained Marina's trap and her counter-trap using the tidal flooding system. Fred grinned with admiration. "That's brilliant trap-making, Velma. You use the environment and their own greed against them. Classic misdirection combined with natural forces." Speaking of Marina," Shaggy interrupted nervously. "Won't she and her goons be coming after us once they dry off?" As if on cue, angry shouts echoed from the beach. Marina and her accomplices were recovering from the water trap, and they did not sound happy. "We need to spring our own trap, a real one this time," Fred said, his leadership instincts taking over. "Velma, you know this island better than anyone now. Where's the best place to corner them?" Velma thought quickly, mentally mapping the island's geography. The old pirate fortress ruins near the center of the island. It's got only 2 entrances, stone walls that are still mostly intact, and according to the historical records, a holding cell where they kept prisoners. If we can lure them there, then we can trap them inside and call the authorities. Daphne finished excitedly. "But how do we lure them?" Shaggy asked. I don't think they're gonna follow us just because we asked nicely." Scooby's eyes suddenly lit up. "Treasure. Remake them refounded." "Scooby's right," Velma exclaimed. "We need bait. Something that looks like the treasure valuable enough that Marina's greed will override her caution." Fred was already scanning their surroundings. The cave we were trapped in had those old wooden support beams. We could break some apart, put them in a container, and make it look like we found a chest full of gold coins. And I can use my makeup mirror and some gold-colored sand from the beach to create fake gold dust," Daphne added. "From a distance, in dim light, it'll be convincing enough." "I hate to be the voice of doom here," Shaggy said, wringing his hands. "But won't Marina just try to take the fake treasure and trap us again?" "Not if we control the environment," Fred explained. his strategic mind working through the details. Here's the plan. Velma and Daphne prepare the fake treasure. Shaggy, Scooby, and I will rig the fortress with a proper trap, something that will contain Marina and her crew without hurting them. We need rope, some kind of net if we can improvise one, and a trigger mechanism. Velma nodded. The old pirate fortress should have materials we can use. Those pirates were master trap makers. There might even be original mechanisms we can repurpose. Then let's move fast, Fred urged. We've got maybe 20 minutes before Marina reorganizes and comes looking for us. Everyone clear on the plan? Rhea, Scooby barked determinedly. Like, as clear as I'm gonna be when facing angry treasure hunters, Shaggy moaned, but he followed along anyway. The gang split into their assigned tasks. Fred, Shaggy, and Scooby raced toward the fortress ruins while Velma and Daphne worked on creating their convincing fake treasure. At the fortress, Fred immediately assessed the structure with an expert eye. The stone walls were crumbling but solid, and true to Velma's research, there were only two entrances, a main gate and a smaller rear door. The courtyard in the center was open to the sky, with old flagstones covering the ground. Perfect, Fred said. Shaggy, Scooby, look for rope nets, anything we can use. I'm checking the structure for trap mechanisms. While they searched, Fred discovered something remarkable. Hidden beneath moss and debris was an elaborate system of counterweights and pulleys. The old pirates had built a cage system that could drop from the ceiling beams above the courtyard. This is incredible engineering, Fred marveled. They understood mechanical advantage, weight distribution, and timing mechanisms. This is advanced physics applied practically. Rephysics? Scooby asked, confused. He means the pirates were smart enough to build a really good trap using science, Shaggy translated. Like, I found some old rope. It's kind of moldy, but still strong. And I found fishing nets in one of the storage rooms. Scooby added proudly, dragging several tangled nets behind him. Perfect, Fred exclaimed. Now help me restore this mechanism. We need to attach the nets to these pulleys, then rig a trigger that releases when someone steps on this specific flagstone here. He indicated a slightly raised stone in the center of the courtyard. As they worked, Fred explained the principle. This trap works on potential energy. The nets are raised and held in place by tension. When the trigger releases, gravity does the work, and the nets drop. It's efficient because it doesn't require constant power or force. The pirates understood that good design means using natural forces to your advantage, like understanding that water flows downhill so you don't have to pump it. Shaggy suggested, remembering Velma's tidal trap. Exactly. And in economics, it's the same principle work with natural incentives and tendencies rather than against them. That's why our fake treasure will work on Marina. We're using her natural greed against her. Meanwhile, Daphne and Velma were putting the finishing touches on their decoy treasure. They'd found an old wooden box near the pirate camp, filled it with rocks for weight, and covered the top layer with sand mixed with shiny mica particles that sparkled like gold dust. A few pieces of brass hardware from the boat served as coins. It's not perfect, Velma admitted, but in low light and with Marina's desperation to believe, it should work. Psychology and economics intersect here, Daphne observed. Marina has what's called sunk cost fallacy. She's invested so much time, money, and effort into finding this treasure that she can't admit it might not exist or that she might be wrong. So she see what she wants to see. Exactly, Velma agreed. She's throwing good money after bad, which is one of the classic financial mistakes. A rational person would cut their losses and walk away, but ego and greed prevent that. The two young women carried their fake treasure chest toward the fortress, taking a deliberately visible path. As expected, Marina and her soggy, angry accomplices spotted them from across the island. There they are, Marina shrieked. And they have something. It must be the treasure. The trap is set. Velma whispered to Daphne. Now we just need to get them to follow us inside. They broke into a run, but not too fast. They needed Marina to keep them in sight, to believe she could catch them. It was like fishing. You had to let the line out just enough to keep the fish interested without letting it escape. Marina and her thugs gave chase, their greed overriding any caution they should have felt after the beach incident. They crashed through the underbrush, their eyes fixed on the wooden chest the girls were carrying. Velma and Daphne burst through the main gate of the fortress, running across the courtyard toward the rear exit where Fred had positioned himself. As they passed the trigger stone, they carefully stepped over it. Marina and her crew weren't so careful. They charged into the courtyard, and Marina herself stepped directly on the trigger stone in her haste. Whoosh! The ancient mechanism worked perfectly. The nets dropped from above, weighted at the edges with stones Fred had added. Marina and her two accomplices were caught in the nets like fish, tangled and unable to escape. "What now?" Marina screamed, struggling against the netting. "Let me out. That treasure is mine." Fred, Shaggy, and Scooby emerged from their hiding places, quickly securing the edges of the nets to iron rings set in the fortress walls, original features the pirates had used for exactly this purpose. "Actually," Velma said calmly, opening the treasure chest to reveal rocks and sand, "there is no treasure. Just this fake one we made to catch you." Marina's face went from rage to disbelief to despair as she saw the worthless contents. "And now I invested everything. My savings, my reputation, I even took out loans, ... quotes. And that's the lesson," Daphne said, not unkindly. "Never invest more than you can afford to lose. And definitely never commit crimes to fund an investment. You violated every principle of ethical business and personal finance." One of Marina's thugs looked at his trapped employer with disgust. "You said this was a sure thing. You said we'd be rich." "I could have been working a real job instead of following you to this cursed island." "Yeah," the other thug agreed. "And you were going to double-cross us anyway, weren't you? Keep most of the treasure for yourself?" Marina's silence was damning. "See," Velma said quietly, "that's what happens when partnerships are built on greed instead of trust. Eventually, everyone turns on each other. There's no honor among thieves, as they say." Fred pulled out his walkie-talkie, which now worked properly outside the cave. "Coast Guard, this is Fred Jones on Treasure Island. We have 3 criminals here who need to be taken into custody. They're wanted for fraud, attempted kidnapping, and trespassing. We'll explain everything when you arrive." As they waited for the authorities, the gang sat on the fortress walls, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of orange and gold. The real treasure, they realized, wasn't gold coins or jewels. It was sitting right here with people you could trust, people who had your back even when you made mistakes. "Velma," Fred said gently, "there's still something we need to address." Velma nodded, knowing what was coming. "The treasure map. Whether it's real or not, did you ever really plan to search for it without us?" Daphne asked. Velma was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, at first, yes. I thought I was being smart, being careful, protecting our friendship from being corrupted by money. But I see now that I was actually being the opposite. I was letting the money corrupt me before we even found it. I was choosing potential wealth over actual friendship. Like, for what it's worth," Shaggy said. "I think I get it. Money is scary. It changes things." "Rhea," Scooby agreed. "Rut reens are redder ran reaser. Friends are better than treasure," Velma repeated, smiling through tears. "You're absolutely right, Scooby. And I'm sorry, I forgot that, even for a little while." Fred put his hand on Velma's shoulder. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is that when it mattered, when we were in real danger, you used your brilliant mind to save us all. You chose us over the treasure over everything. So what do we do about the map?" Daphne asked practically. "Is there really treasure on this island?" Velma pulled out the map and studied it one more time. Honestly, I don't know. Captain Goldbeard's treasure might be real, might be legend, might have been found centuries ago. But here's what I do know. This island has been the site of fraud, crime, and broken dreams for decades. Maybe the real treasure was keeping us from becoming like Marina, so obsessed with wealth that we de-sacrifice everything good in our lives to chase it. So, we're not gonna dig for it? Shaggy asked, sounding both relieved and slightly disappointed. I propose we donate the map to the Coral Cove Maritime Museum, Velma suggested. Let historians and archaeologists study it properly. If there is treasure, it should be excavated legally and ethically, and probably belongs in a museum anyway, where everyone can appreciate it. I think that's a wonderful idea, Daphne agreed. Me too, Fred nodded. Like, does the museum have a snack bar? Shaggy asked hopefully. Everyone laughed, the tension finally breaking. In the distance, they could hear the Coast Guard boats approaching, their sirens echoing across the water. Justice was coming for Marina and her accomplices, and the mystery of treasure. Island was about to be solved, not with gold and jewels, but with friendship, integrity, and the wisdom to know that some treasures can't be measured in money. But what would Marina reveal when questioned? And was there more to Captain Goldbeard's treasure than anyone suspected? Money corrupted me before we even found it. I was choosing potential wealth over actual friendship. Like, for what it's worth, Shaggy said. I think I get it. Money is scary. It changes things. Rhea, Scooby agreed. Rut reens are redder ren reager. Friends are better than treasure, Velma repeated, smiling through tears. You're absolutely right, Scooby. And I'm sorry I forgot that, even for a little while. Fred put his hand on Velma's shoulder. We all make mistakes. The important thing is that when it mattered, when we were in real danger, you used your brilliant mind to save us all. You chose us over the treasure over everything. So, what do we do about the map? Daphne asked practically. Is there really treasure on this island? Velma pulled out the map and studied it one more time. Honestly, I don't know. Captain Goldbeard's treasure might be real, might be legend, might have been found centuries ago. But here's what I do know. This island has been the site of fraud, crime, and broken dreams for decades. Maybe the real treasure was keeping us from becoming like Marina, so obsessed with wealth that we de-sacrifice everything good in our lives to chase it. So, we're not gonna dig for it? Shaggy asked, sounding both relieved and slightly disappointed. I propose we donate the map to the Coral Cove Maritime Museum, Velma suggested. Let historians and archaeologists study it properly. If there is treasure, it should be excavated legally and ethically, and probably belongs in a museum anyway, where everyone can appreciate it. I think that's a wonderful idea, Daphne agreed. Me too, Fred nodded. Like, does the museum have a snack bar? Shaggy asked hopefully. Everyone laughed, the tension finally breaking. In the distance, they could hear the Coast Guard boats approaching, their sirens echoing across the water. Justice was coming for Marina and her accomplices, and the mystery of treasure. Island was about to be solved, not with gold and jewels, but with friendship, integrity, and the wisdom to know that some treasures can't be measured in money. But what would Marina reveal when questioned? And was there more to Captain Goldbeard's treasure than anyone suspected? The Coast Guard cutter pulled alongside the island's dock, its spotlight cutting through the gathering dusk. Captain Patricia Rodriguez, a no-nonsense officer with 20 years of experience, was the first to disembark, followed by 2 junior officers. Fred Jones? She called out, spotting the gang waiting near the fortress. We got your call. Where are the perpetrators? Trapped in the old fortress, Captain, Fred reported professionally. 3 individuals, Marina depths and 2 accomplices. They're secured with netting and not going anywhere. As they led Captain Rodriguez to the fortress, Velma explained everything. The counterfeit coins, Marina's fraud scheme, the attempted kidnapping, and how they'd used a trap to capture the criminals safely. Captain Rodriguez examined the scene with approval. Impressive work, and nobody got hurt? Just Marina's pride and her bank account, Daphne quipped. The Coast Guard officers carefully extracted Marina and her thugs from the netting. Marina was defiant even in defeat. I want a lawyer. This is entrapment. These kids had no right to. Actually, ma'am, they had every right to defend themselves from your attempted kidnapping. Captain Rodriguez interrupted firmly. And based on what I'm hearing, the FBI will want to talk to you about the counterfeit coin operation. That's federal fraud. One of Marina's accomplices, the younger one, who'd seemed less committed to the scheme, spoke up nervously. Captain, I want to cooperate. I'll tell you everything. Marina promised us each a third of the treasure, but we found emails on her laptop showing she planned to report us to authorities after she got the treasure, keeping everything for herself. Shut up, you idiot, Marina snarled. Ma'am, I'd advise you to remain silent, Captain Rodriguez said, reading Marina her rights. As the Coast Guard officers escorted the prisoners toward the boat, Marina turned back to the gang one last time. You don't understand, she called out desperately. That treasure is real. I've spent 5 years researching it, 10,000 hours of work, $60,000 of my own money. It has to be real. That's the sunk cost fallacy talking, Velma said, loud enough for Marina to hear. Just because you've invested time and money doesn't mean continuing to invest more is the right decision. A smart investor knows when to cut their losses. Sometimes the best financial decision is admitting you were wrong and walking away, Daphne added. Marina's face crumpled, the reality of her situation finally hitting her. She'd lost everything chasing a dream, and worse, she'd become a criminal in the process. The Coast Guard officers led her away as she sobbed. Sad, Shaggy observed quietly. Like, she could have just gotten a regular job and saved up money the honest way. Rhea, Scooby agreed. Ronus Rourke is redder. Captain Rodriguez returned to the gang after securing the prisoners on the boat. I'll need full statements from all of you, but that can wait until we're back on the mainland. Right now, I'm concerned about this. She held up the treasure map, which had been confiscated from Marina's belongings. Is this authentic? Velma adjusted her glasses. I believe the map itself is a genuine 18th century document. Whether it actually leads to treasure is another question entirely. Captain Rodriguez, I'd like to propose donating it to the Coral Cove Maritime Museum for proper historical analysis. That's generous of you, the captain said, impressed. Technically, since you found it in a public library, it probably belongs to the city anyway. But I'll note your cooperation in my report. The museum's director, Dr. Sarah Chun, is actually an expert on colonial-era piracy. She'd be thrilled. Before we leave the island, Fred said, there's one more thing we should do. He led the group back to the cave where he and Daphne had been trapped. Using their flashlights, they ventured deeper than before, past the boulder trap to where the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. And there, in a natural alcove in the rock, they found it. Not a chest of gold coins or precious jewels. Something better. It was a library. Captain Goldbeard's actual treasure was dozens of books, rare volumes on navigation, mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, and science. Books that in the 1700s were worth their weight in gold to anyone who could read. Books that represented knowledge, education, and the power to think independently. Jinkies, Velma whispered, tears forming behind her glasses. This is incredible. Among the books was a leather-bound journal, and when Velma carefully opened it, she found Captain Goldbeard's own handwriting. To whoever finds this collection, I was called a pirate, a thief, a scoundrel. Perhaps I was all those things. But I learned late in life that the greatest treasure is not gold that can be stolen or spent, but knowledge that enriches the mind and can be shared freely without diminishing. I stole these books from those who would hoard them, keeping education only for the wealthy. I hide them here, not to keep them from the world. but to wait for someone worthy, someone clever enough to solve my puzzles, wise enough to see value beyond gold. If you're reading this, you understand. Share this treasure as I could not. Let it teach as I wish I had been taught. The gang stood in awed silence. He was trying to create a library, Daphne realized. Access to education for anyone smart enough to find it. And he understood something that Marina never did, Velma added. That real wealth, the kind that actually improves lives, is knowledge, skills, relationships, and the wisdom to use resources well. Money is just a tool. These books, this knowledge, this is actual treasure. So we're donating the books to the museum too, right? Shaggy asked. Absolutely, Velma confirmed. Where they can be preserved, studied, and shared with everyone. That's what Captain Goldberg wanted. Captain Rodriguez helped him carefully pack the precious books for transport. You kids have found something truly valuable today. The historical significance alone is immeasurable. Dr. Chun is going to lose her mind when she sees this. As they boarded the Coast Guard cutter for the trip back to Coral Cove, Scooby suddenly perked up. Relma? Did Rowina's Rolex Randon Rur? Velma smiled. Because she'd already told them she planned to betray them, Scooby. They had no loyalty to her because she'd shown them no loyalty. That's another economic principle. Trust is valuable. When you betray people, you lose their cooperation, and eventually, it catches up with you. Marina could have succeeded if she'd built an honest team with fair profit sharing. Instead, her greed ensured her failure. Plus, Fred added, she made the classic villain mistake of underestimating her opponents. She saw us as just kids, instead of recognizing that intelligence, teamwork, and integrity could defeat her. The boat sliced through the waves toward the lights of Coral Cove. The gang stood on deck, watching Treasure Island recede into the darkness behind them. You know what I learned today? Shaggy said suddenly. Besides the obvious don't commit fraud stuff? What's that, Shaggy? Daphne asked. That being poor, but with friends, is way better than being rich and alone. Marina had all that money to spend on equipment and stuff, but she was miserable. We've got practically nothing, but I'm having a good time. Most of the time. When we're not running from monsters. Raggy's right. Scooby nodded sagely. Friendship is priceless. Velma laughed, hugging her canine best friend. Priceless, Scooby. And you're absolutely right. The things that matter most, friendship, trust, integrity, love, those can't be bought with money. They can only be earned through how we treat each other. Although, Shaggy added hopefully, friendship plus a pizza would be even better than friendship alone. Just saying. Everyone laughed as the boat docked at Coral Cove. Waiting on the pier was Dr. Sarah Chun from the Maritime Museum, having been called by Captain Rodriguez. When she saw the carefully wrapped books, her professional composure cracked into pure joy. Are these? Oh my goodness, is this really Captain Goldbeard's collection? I've spent my entire career researching him, and historians thought this was just a legend. It's real, Velma confirmed, handing over the precious cargo. And we'd like to donate all of it to the museum, with the condition that it be made accessible for research and education. Dr. Chun wiped tears from her eyes. This is the discovery of a lifetime. Thank you, all of you. Do you understand what you've done? These books will teach us so much about colonial-era navigation, piracy, trade routes, and this journal. Captain Goldbeard's actual thoughts and records. Just promise the knowledge will be shared, Velma requested. That's what he wanted. I'd promise, Dr. Chen said solemnly. In fact, I'll make sure the museum creates a special youth education program in honor of the Mystery Inc. gang. Free access to the collection for any student who wants to learn. That's perfect, Fred said warmly. As they walked back to the Mystery Machine, exhausted but satisfied, Shaggy voiced the question they were all thinking. So, are we gonna tell people that Velma tried to keep the treasure secret at first? There was a moment of uncomfortable silence. Then Daphne spoke up. I don't think we need to mention that part. Velma made a mistake. She recognized it. She apologized, and she spent the rest of the adventure making it right. That's what matters. We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. Besides, Fred added, if anyone asks, we can honestly say that Velma Dinkley put the truth, and her friends above personal gain used her brilliant mind to capture criminals and donated priceless historical artifacts to public education. That's the story that matters. Velma felt a wave of gratitude and relief. Thank you guys, really. I don't deserve friends like you. Like, you kind of do though, Shaggy said with a grin. You just saved us all with your big brain and your trap-making skills. That's worth at least a dozen mistakes. Rhea. Scooby agreed enthusiastically. They piled into the mystery machine, and as Fred started the engine, Velma looked at her friends, her real treasure, and smiled. Hey, gang, she said softly. Next time I find a treasure map, I'm telling you immediately. And we'll all investigate together, Daphne confirmed. And probably still end up running from some monster, Shaggy added. Rand eating Scooby snacks. Scooby finished cheerfully. Everyone laughed as the van pulled away from the harbor, heading toward town and the pizza parlor where they'd celebrate their victory properly. But the mystery wasn't quite over yet, because tomorrow, when they returned to Coral Cove to give their official statements, they would learn something surprising about Captain Goldberg, Marina Depths, and the true meaning of treasure that would tie everything together in one final, unexpected lesson. The next morning, the gang sat in the Coral Cove Police Station's conference room, giving their formal statements to Detective Maria Santos. The room smelled of coffee and old paperwork, but the atmosphere was friendly and relaxed. So let me make sure I have this right, Detective Santos said, reviewing her notes with a slight smile. Marina Depths was funding her treasure hunt by creating and selling counterfeit coins, committed fraud, attempted kidnapping, and was ultimately caught in a trap made from a 300-year-old pirate security system that you teenagers managed to repair and operate? Pretty much, Fred confirmed. Though in fairness, the original pirates did excellent engineering work. We just figured out how to trigger it. Detective Santos shook her head in amazement. You kids continue to impress. I've been on the force for 15 years, and I've never seen better detective work from civilians. What's going to happen to Marina? Daphne asked. The detective's expression grew serious. She's facing multiple federal charges: wire fraud, mail fraud for selling the fake coins, counterfeiting, and attempted kidnapping. Her two accomplices are cooperating and will likely get reduced sentences. Marina herself is looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison, plus restitution payments to everyone she defrauded. That's sad, Velma said quietly. She threw away her whole life for treasure that didn't even exist. Not the way she thought it did. Anyway, speaking of which, Detective Santos pulled out a file. Dr. Chen from the Maritime Museum asked me to give you this. She's been up all night examining the books and Captain Goldbeard's journal. She found something you should see. She passed around copies of journal pages that Dr. Chen had carefully photographed and transcribed. As the gang read, their eyes widened. Captain Goldberg, whose real name was William Bartholomew Gold, hadn't been a pirate at all, at least not in the traditional sense. He'd been a privateer, technically legal, who had become disillusioned with how wealth was hoarded by the aristocracy, while common people could not even learn to read. I have taken ships full of gold, one passage read, but I learned that gold does nothing but sit in wealthy men's vaults, creating no value, helping no one. So I began taking something else, books. I would raid ships carrying educational materials to expensive schools, and I would hide these books where clever, determined people might find them. Not the wealthy who could afford education anyway, but those willing to solve puzzles and think creatively. Those are the people who deserve knowledge. Another passage was even more revealing. I have created several such libraries throughout the Caribbean. Each is hidden, each requires wit to find. This is my true legacy. Not gold coins that corrupt and divide, but knowledge that enriches and uplifts. My only regret is that I cannot see the faces of those who find these treasures. I hope they understand that the greatest wealth is that which you can share without losing the wealth of an educated mind, a cultivated spirit, and the wisdom to use what you have in service of others. There are more libraries? Shaggy gasped. Like hidden treasure book rooms all over the place? According to this journal, at least 5 more, Detective Santos confirmed. Dr. Chun is already coordinating with maritime historians throughout the Caribbean to search for them. This could revolutionize our understanding of colonial-era literacy and education. Access. Velma was reading with tears streaming down her face behind her glasses. He understood. Captain Goldberg understood what Marina never did. That the point of wealth isn't to hoard it or spend it on yourself. It's to use it in ways that create value for others. These books taught people who used that education to become navigators, merchants, doctors, teachers. The economic impact of this kind of investment in human capital is immeasurable. That's beautiful, Daphne said, reading over Velma's shoulder. He was literally investing in people's futures and their ability to improve their own economic situations through education. And he did it anonymously, Fred noted. He didn't want credit or fame. He just wanted to help. Detective Santos nodded. Dr. Chun also found something else interesting. Marina Depps is actually a descendant of one of Goldberg's crew members, a man who helped him create these hidden libraries. According to family records Marina had researched, her ancestor's diary mentioned treasure beyond gold, but never specified what that meant. Marina assumed it meant literal treasure. She spent her inheritance and years of her life chasing the wrong dream. The irony, Velma said sadly, is that if Marina had interpreted the clues correctly, she could have found the books, donated them to museums, written about her discovery, and become famous in academic circles. She would have been respected, celebrated, and probably would have gotten speaking fees and book deals that would have made her wealthy anyway. By choosing the unethical path, she lost everything. That is a perfect illustration of how ethical business practices actually serve self-interest better than greed does. Daphne observed, reputation matters, trust matters, long-term thinking matters. Marina was so focused on short-term gain that she destroyed her long-term prospects. Just then, Dr. Chun herself burst into the conference room, her face flushed with excitement. "I'm so glad you're all still here. I have news." One of Captain Goldberg's journal entries mentions that he hid a small reward for whoever found his first library. It's not part of the historical donation. It's specifically meant as a gift for the finders. She placed a small wooden box on the table. Inside, cushioned in velvet, were 5 antique silver coins, real ones, not counterfeits, each engraved with a simple message. Knowledge is treasure. Share it wisely. These are genuine Spanish silver dollars from 1740, Dr. Chun explained. Each one is worth about $5,000 to collectors. But more than that, they're a message from Captain Goldberg himself to whoever found his library. The gang stared at the coins in astonishment. "So like, we actually did find treasure?" Shaggy said, dazed. "Real treasure? The kind we can spend on food?" Rapidly, Scooby's tail wagged excitedly. "But it's not the kind of treasure that corrupts," Velma realized, picking up one of the coins carefully. "It's not millions of dollars that would change who we are. It's a modest reward that recognizes the work we did, and more importantly, it comes with a message about responsibility. Share it wisely." Fred read from the coin's inscription. "Not hoard it or spend it on yourself. Share it wisely." Daphne smiled. "I think we should donate most of it. Keep maybe one coin as a keepsake. We can take turns who holds it and use the rest to support the youth education program Dr. Chun mentioned. That's exactly what Captain Goldberg would have wanted, Velma agreed enthusiastically. We use our reward to help others get access to education. We're continuing his mission. Like, I'm totally on board with that, Shaggy said, though he looked a bit wistful. But maybe we could keep enough to buy like one really nice pizza party first, as a team celebration? Everyone laughed. I think one pizza party falls under sharing it wisely, Fred decided. We worked hard, we earned a celebration, and we should enjoy our success together before putting the rest toward helping others. Dr. Chun beamed. That's perfect. I'll make sure the museum recognizes your donation publicly, not to embarrass you, but because young people need to see examples of ethical decision-making and generosity. You're role models, whether you realize it or not. As they left the police station, Velma hung back for a moment, looking at the coin in her hand. The silver caught the morning sunlight, making it gleam. You okay, Velma? Fred asked, noticing she'd stopped. Yeah, she said softly. I'm just thinking about how different this could have been. If I'd succeeded in keeping the treasure secret, if I'd gone to that island alone, if I'd let greed change me ... I could have ended up like Marina. Brilliant but bitter, successful in searching but failing in everything that matters. Daphne put an arm around her friend. But you didn't end up like Marina. You caught yourself. You chose friendship. And you taught all of us something important about the real meaning of wealth. What's that? Velma asked. That it's not about how much money you have, Daphne explained. It's about having people you can trust. Being able to trust yourself to do the right thing, and understanding that the best investments are in relationships, education, and helping others succeed. Those are the things that compound over time and pay the highest returns. Shaggy jogged back to them. Like, are you guys coming? Scooby found a place that has a lunch special large pizza, wings, and salad for $20. We could celebrate and save money through savvy consumer choices. That's the spirit, Shaggy. Velma laughed, pocketing the coin and catching up with her friends. Finding value in making smart choices. At the pizza place, they crowded into a booth, and as they waited for their food, they reflected on their adventure. So what did everyone learn? Fred asked, in his typical wrap-up fashion. Daphne went first. I learned that greed can make smart people do stupid things, and that the best business strategy is always honesty and long-term thinking. I learned that old pirates were way smarter than movies make them seem, Fred added. And that good engineering lasts centuries. Like, I learned that treasure is cool and all, but not if you have to become a bad person to get it, Shaggy contributed. Also that the real treasure was the friends we made along the way, and the pizza we're about to eat. Ran Scooby snacks. Scooby added, ran that vegetation is Rothmore ran Roni. Everyone turned to Velma, who took a deep breath. I learned that I'm not immune to temptation, she said honestly. I thought I was above it, that my logical mind would protect me from greed. But I was wrong. I learned that even smart people need accountability, need friends who'll call them out when they're making mistakes. I learned that secrets are corrosive, even when you tell yourself they're for good reasons. And most importantly, I learned that the people in this booth are worth more to me than all the treasure in the world. She raised her water glass. To Mystery Inc., the only treasure I'll ever need. To Mystery Inc. The others echoed, clinking their glasses together. Their pizza arrived, and as they dug in with characteristic enthusiasm, Scooby suddenly perked up. Rise, Rook,